I've just taken the popular political compass test. Uh, it asks you a series of questions that puts you on a grid. Um, each quadrant of the grid is a 10 square by 10 square block that places you up and down as either someone who is authoritarian or libertarian, and on the right and left as either, all the way to the right wing or all the way to the left wing. This is something I think that's seriously missing in terms of an understanding of American politics. We view everything in terms of right or left, and it is up to only the politically educated to determine whether a Democrat or Republican is either authoritarian or libertarian. And here in America, largely what the public knows of as a libertarian is somebody who is right-wing and is more fiscally, economically libertarian rather than socially libertarian. Authoritarian simply means that you would defer more to an authority in terms of declaring things to you. And libertarian would be somebody who is more interested in the rights of the individual and the freedom of the people. Now, where I fell on this grid was a little ways, a few notches into the left wing, but a lot of notches into the libertarian section. So I am Libertarian Left. Now, that should tell you a lot about why my channel is not only very anti-Christian fundamentalist, which is something that's very authoritarian and right-winged, as well as anti-feminism. Because feminism is very left-wing, but it is also extremely authoritarian. So you could consider feminism, especially intersectional feminism, as extremely authoritarian left. And that would also sort of give you an idea of why it's common these days to hear feminists called cultural Marxists. Marxism is very authoritarian left. And fascism, Nazism is authoritarian right-wing. It's always very uncomfortable for somebody who's at least a little versed in history like I am to hear people constantly compare Hitler and Stalin as if they had the same ideas. No, these two people wanted to destroy each other, and a large part of how World War II ended in terms of utter defeat for the Nazis was that they decided to go at Stalin, and Stalin decided to go at them. Stalin was one of the allies. Not a lot of people know this, that it was sort of Italy, Japan, Germany, among some other states, versus America, Britain, France, and I always said America, Britain, France, but also Russia. Russia had initially decided to try to stay out of it, at least as far as Germany. When they had a non-aggression pact, Germany violated it and attacked Russia, and that was a big mistake. But that's sort of a conversation for another time. The thing is, these were two completely incompatible ideologies, but they were both authoritarians, and it's the authoritarianism that scares people. But they don't exactly know why they should be scared. Only that, communists are bad, Nazis are bad, and that's the end of it for them. Now, I'm not exactly calling feminists communists, but they are authoritarian. When looking back at some of the ways I answered some of these questions, they were done on only a 4-point scale of strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly disagree. Why I didn't kind of fall further left, and I'm not sure. I admit to being more a student of history than I am a student of politics, of what necessarily policy-wise makes you left or right-wing. I only have kind of a layman's understanding of. I like to think I know a little bit more than the next guy, but I definitely do not know more than the next law professor or government professor. I like to think that maybe because I was very anti-censorship, maybe, that I was pro-freedom of the people up to and including having the right to hold some conservative ideas. The way some of these questions were worded was strange. There was loaded language in these questions. I got to be honest with you, I don't 100% like this test. You know, a lot of it is preferable, it is regrettable. It's sad that, you know, these emotionally charged questions were somewhat throwing me off, and I had to read questions several times to figure out exactly where they were going with this. But I landed almost exactly where I thought I would on this quadrant. So I can tell you outright that this channel is anti-authoritarian, and that in order to be authoritarian is to be what some people think of as religious or as cultist almost. Whenever you see somebody buying into something and you're like, you know, have you thought about what you're doing? And they're like, no, you know, supreme leader this, my idol that, you know, I want to model myself after this organization. Whenever you see somebody who is out parading in the streets holding up not just a sign but wearing a shirt that says something, that's not necessarily a libertarian protester. A lot of people would think of protesters as anti-something, but that's not necessarily true. They might be pro-something, equally authoritarian, but opposed to what they are protesting. That's what you're kind of getting with feminism. Feminism is very authoritarian because to what point that it is defined, and you're going to see this authoritarianism more expressed in intersectional feminism. And the more I learn about feminism, the more I realize that what I am primarily opposed to necessarily is intersectional feminism, is bell hooks feminism. That's the feminism that is undeniably racist and sexist and classist. Whenever I say feminists hate my skin and hate my gender and hate that I am not poor, they hate that I am not a disabled person. I'm not talking about these feminists you see all over the place, or feminism is for the equality of the people and stuff. These are not the feminist movers and shakers. These are not the feminists that are negatively affecting university culture. These are not the feminists that are propagating propaganda in terms of like the wage gap, the false rape statistics. The feminists I am talking about are what I've noticed on certain websites. I'll see websites like Reddit and Imager and some other places where there's a lot of comments that get upvotes or downvotes. I've frequently seen what is referred to as the straw feminist. The straw feminist is basically based around the idea that the crazy Tumblr feminist, the otherkin feminist, the feminist who wants you to call them Z and Zir or some shit like that, that they're not a real feminist, that they're a fringe offshoot of Looney Tunes people. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. The so-called straw feminist, the so-called fringe feminist, is actually not only the majority of feminism in terms of popularity, but is the majority of feminism in terms of what is affected on culture, the kind of feminists that are rallying around certain candidates or against certain candidates right now, the kind of feminists that have control of the universities, the kind of feminists that are overthrowing Sweden are these straw feminists, the fringe feminists. And it may not be that they're otherkin, gender fluid Looney Tune people, but they are intersectional Looney Tune feminists. And they're the ones that are like, I'm a white devil, right? And they're who I'm talking about. And I feel justified in talking about them because they're not straw feminists, they're real feminists. To say otherwise is a no true Scotsman fallacy. But also that they're not the fringe. Even if there are less of them in number, I assume that's a possibility. There's not less effect on culture from them. There's much, much, much more. I wouldn't freak out at Steve Shives if he said he was a feminist and then started acting in egalitarian ways on this channel. No, I freaked out at Steve Shives because he's an intersectional feminist, and because his content became intersectional feministic. You understand? And those are the cultural Marxist. Those are the us versus them. Those are the dividers of who is oppressed and who is not oppressed. And those are the ones that are propagating the idea where you could call a white woman oppressed because she's a woman, but the oppressor of the patriarchy because she's white. And have this crazy fucking doublethink. The ones that are going to accuse you of thought crime, the ones that would kick you out of a university for saying something anti-feminist, the ones who would bar you from speaking at a university, even if you were an avowed feminist, but had once said something that is not in concordance or very against intersectional feminism, that you wouldn't be allowed to speak, that you would be censored. This is intersectional feminism, and this is the authoritarian left up here, and that's what I'm against. And I'm down here towards the middle, right where Teal Deer fell in his thing, in terms of keep the fuck out of my business. But not so far down where I would agree with some of the channels I subscribe to in terms of keep the fuck out of big business, keep the fuck out of the economic market. I disagree, which would prevent me from falling all the way south. I don't really exactly know why I'm not further left. I almost got to wonder if there's a weight where in order to get further left, you can't be this far south. Because what's we now consider, in terms of the Marxism of old, the bourgeoisie versus the fucking proletariats, the rich versus the poor, the upper class versus the lower class struggle is being expressed up in the top left with feminism. I, even though not rich, not a CEO, not a politician, have no sway with CEOs and politicians, don't have social power even in terms of small shit. I kind of keep to myself, you might have been able to tell, that I still somehow meet their view of the elite. That's insane to me. That because of the color of my skin, I am of the reviled elite oppressors. And they couch this in weasel words like privilege, where they won't define what that means. They won't apply the reasoning of privilege to themselves if they are woman or of color or not able-bodied or not cisgender, as if there's any real evidence of this. Aster, shut up. Thank you. I apologize. Let's wrap this up. So then you got the authoritarian right wing, the Christians who would have you, just as the authoritarian feminists, have to believe what they believe, have to do as they say, have to adopt their culture and their sense of right and wrong, that both these authoritarian sides want to accuse you of thought crime and brand you a suppressive person. That's, I'm glad to have that answer because, in conclusion, when I started going after feminism way more than Christianity, I thought it was, almost everything's kind of been said and done by those who came before me in terms of addressing Christianity. And I didn't want to just copy people. I feel like copying the parroting bullet points is something that channels that I don't like, atheist channels that I don't like, do. And that I needed to be able to say something that was at least a bit unique. And that was difficult. But feminism is a very new threat. And it's the same kind of threat. And it's so much easier to talk about and take a new stance on and address. And it's also a new and big thing. But, I'm not necessarily here to draw your attention. I would do better video editing, and I would monetize, and I would whore myself out a bit more, and I'd fucking open up a Patreon, and I'd also suck less. But to those of you who are interested in what I have to say, all I'm doing is implore you to consider what I say and think for yourself. And perhaps that's the ultimate reason why I am anti-feminist and anti-Christian fundamentalist, is because they would not have you think for themselves. They would have you to think like they do. Thanks for watching.